Hoop Ball podcast listeners. Are you a fantasy expert and want to write or podcast for Hoop Ball? Do you have aspirations of covering a team? Are you a master of sales and want to earn some cash on the phones? Well, we've got good news. Hoop Ball's recruiting. If you think you have what it takes, hit us up at Hoop Ball Fantasy on Twitter or by emailing teamhoopball@hoop-ball.com. Again, that's at Hoop Ball Fantasy on Twitter or emailing teamhoopball@hoop-ball.com.
The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello, and welcome to the Hoop Ball DFS Today podcast. It is Thursday, August 6th, and I'm joined by none other than the wonderful Aaron Asmus, and I am your host, Mike Patra, and we're here to break down 5-game main slate, but we also have that one standalone captain's mode game, so we're going to have 6 games to talk about, but let me talk, Aaron. How are you? How are you doing, brother? I know this is going to be your first podcast with us. So for those of you that don't know Aaron, he also contributes on the writing end over here at Hoop Ball for DFS. So if you're a premium member, you've probably seen a few of his articles in our layup lines and doing some good things over here. And happy to have you aboard. But how you feeling, man?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be on the podcast and get to talk about a slate. Unfortunately, had a little bit of technical difficulties last week, but now we're kind of fully into this thing and just ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was like one of those circumstances where, the computer malfunctioned on you. So it's like, you signed the contract. We just needed you to pass the physical. And you passed the physical now, man. You got the doctors checked you out. You're good to go. They said you could jump on there now. So the computer's
That's it. I'm ready to get some minutes.
That's it. We're sliding you into the rotation. The young rookie over here looking to eventually earn himself a nice spot now. But we got some good games to talk about, man. I'm happy to have you on the show. P, I think our listeners are going to look forward to hearing a lot more of you. I've read a lot of these articles you've wrote. I've talked to you several times now. Great kid, and I know you know your stuff, but why don't you tell every one of our listeners a little bit something else about you, maybe where you're from, favorite NBA team, and maybe a fun fact. I always like to get the fun facts in there.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, my favorite team are the Sacramento Kings, who kind of decided not to really show up to the bubble. They started 0-3 while kind of every other kind of that fringe playoff team is playing really well. So kind of, thank goodness I have DFS. Let's just put it that way. And kind of a fun fact about me, I would say I was a music major in college as well as a journalism major. So I decided to double major, kind of put my feet in 2 different pools.
Double major, better than me, man. I had a major and I had a cognate and a minor. I was not going to double major though. I had to do too many of the internships and I was bartending, right. Late nights, all that good jazz. But nonetheless, we both, I think we got it done. I got it done, so I'm good with it. But I give you a lot of credit, man. That's tough studies. 2 majors, it's a lot of classes, a lot of stuff to juggle. It just goes to show that you put your time and effort into the things you want to do, and that's another reason why we're happy to have you over here, man, at Hoop Ball. So we'll jump right into this. Nah, man, of course. I think everybody else is gonna learn to love you as well. So we're gonna talk about this first standalone game. Obviously, it's by itself, so it's a showdown slate. So we're gonna have to take it in the perspective of the captain's mode, and that game is going to be the New Orleans Pelicans going against the Sacramento Kings. Your Sacramento Kings, 233 over under. Pelicans are actually being favored by 4. Not much of a surprise. You just said it. Your Kings 0-3 right now, but we'll start with this New Orleans team. Zion's back, looking like he's getting a little bit of a minutes increase. Played 25 in the last one, but where would you go? I guess we'll start off with. Is anybody on this Pelicans team looking to be your captain?
Yeah, I think it'd probably be the high minutes guys. I think kind of generally in these showdown slates, especially if I'm looking for like an optimal cash game, I'm looking. I'm more often than not looking to get kind of the highest projection guy. So the two guys who stand out for me are going to be Drew Holiday and Brandon Ingram. Just the guys who I feel confident they're going to get the minutes, they're going to get the shots, and just I can feel comfortable in the role they're going to have. You know, with Zion, the Kings aren't a good defensive matchup for him, and he has been slowly ramping his minutes up, but he's still someone where we just don't know where that minutes cap is going to exactly be. Is it 25 again? Is it going to be 28? Is it going to be 22? Are they going to bring him down a little bit? So I think for captains for New Orleans side, I'm going to look to Drew Holiday and Brandon Ingram. Just the two guys I think are going to have the best raw projection.
Yeah, I can't knock you for that. I mean, both these guys, absolute studs. I think they have that high floor, but still that breakthrough ceiling where you can see either one of them get 50 or 60. The guy I actually have eye on is neither one of them for the captain spot, but he's still on this Pelicans team, and I'm looking at Lonzo Ball. Lonzo just plays 10 times better than Zion on the court. Zion's slowly getting his minutes ramped up. First game that we've seen Zion actually play a decent role and a decent amount of minutes. We see a guy like Lonzo come out there and played fairly well. He didn't come out and blow the roof off the doors necessarily, but he also dropped 55 against his team earlier in the year. So he's played well against them before. He managed to put up almost a triple-double against them, 24 actual points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds. So really good game, stuffed in a couple defensive stats as well. And as soon as Zion starts to get a little bit more healthy is when I was really going to gravitate towards Lonzo. We start to see a little bit of the usage slide away from Ingram and go over to Zion. And, if you played 25 in the last game, I anticipate a floor of at least 24. They need to win, ceiling of probably 28 to possibly even 30. So right. I like Zion. I like all four of these guys. At the end of the day, we can't play all four of them. So, looking at a guy like Lonzo and Zion, I think might not be a bad option because
I think Lonzo's the great tournament pivot off those guys because he's just a little bit cheaper and he's just a far more volatile player. So a lot of people are going to kind of be thinking the way I am that Drew Holiday and Brandon Ingram are kind of just your more quote unquote safer options. They're the guys locked in. Lonzo. In this restart, he hit 35 minutes in the last game, but his minutes have been kind of up and down. I think he had one game, 24 minutes against the Clippers, 27 minutes against the Jazz. So I think he would be the great tournament pivot.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that just goes to show you I'm more of the GPP kind of guy. The only other guy other than the four main guys that we just mentioned that's really kind of standing out to me would be a guy like JJ Redick. I love targeting shooting guards against your Kings, man. They've been making me money for quite some time. JJ Redick fits that mold, especially when it's one of those must-win games. You got to expect that they're going to have their shooter on the court, especially if they're trailing. Played 29 minutes in the last one. He's not shy. When he gets over 25 minutes, he's shooting. So the two games that he's played over 26 minutes since returning in the bubble, he's shot at least 15 and 11 times. Both those games, he hit value, 23 and 30 DK points. I like the matchup. So 4K. Actually, 4K is not a bad price tag. I think we're looking at probably a 20-point floor with that 30-point ceiling somehow in there. So, rounds out your
showdown slates. Let me ask you, how do you feel about playing a guy like JJ in the captain and then just getting to load up on the rest of the studs?
It really matters about, the player and the matchup. So I don't mind it as the price and the player. I have a lot of confidence in JJ. But 30 points in the captain spot will be great, but it would make more sense for me if I'm paying up for more Kings. I don't think there's a lot of Kings that we're going to necessarily be paying up for. So if there's a couple other expensive guys on the other side, I wouldn't mind doing that. But I think most of the value and most of the ownership in this game is going to come from the New Orleans side, and it's probably rightfully so. It's just a little bit more confidence in it. We're not really trusting Buddy Hield. We just got burned by Bogdanovich. We've seen Belicia's minutes be up and down. Same thing with Holmes, with Alex Len back. So, we're going to get to the Kings in a second. But there's just, there's four very, very viable options that can easily get you 50 DK points plus on the Pelicans, being Lonzo, Drew, Ingram, and Williamson, Zion. But on, you look at Sacramento, you're pretty much looking at two, and you need Holmes. Holmes being one of them needs 30+ minutes to get you there. So that's yeah. So I like him, but probably like I just said, I don't think I'd make him my captain in this kind of game script.
Gotcha. Okay.
What about Sacramento, man? That's your team. I'm expecting some hard hitting stuff. What can we expect from these Kings?
Yeah, I mean the obvious guy is De'Aaron Fox, who's cheaper than the kind of the three captains we talked about on the Pelicans, and I mean the guy he's just locked in. He's he looks good. He looks quick on the court. He's getting to the rim, and he's kind of the only King you can really trust right now. Just Bogdan has been really inconsistent. Buddy has been incredibly inconsistent with his shot. Just kind of everything's flowing through him. You know, he had 27 shots against Dallas. He had 33 shots against San Antonio, 39 and 38 minutes in those games. And, you know, I think the Kings are personally out of it. But, you know, this is a game where, you know, if they want to keep any semblance of hope alive, they have to win. So Walton has to rely on Fox. He's got to get all his guys just kind of maximum capacity minutes, and then just to keep those playoff hopes alive. So I'm looking at De'Aaron Fox, and then I've been playing with Sean Holmes a lot, unfortunately, in the restart, and he just kind of hasn't looked like the same guy. I don't know if he's out of rhythm or, you know, maybe it's just lack of practice time. Maybe the 10-day quarantine away from the team kind of screwed up his rhythm a little bit. I'm not sure, but I think his price tag, 6,200, is, you know, for, you know, the guy we saw during this season. That's just too cheap in this format. So I think he could be kind of a little more contrarian of a captain option if you want to fit more studs in. And then outside of that, it's like I'm not interested in 9K Bjelica. This is not a good matchup for him against, you know, having to defend Zion, and then when they go small. Harrison Barnes just has been refusing to shoot, and he's kind of just been a guy out there. Kent Bazemore has looked pretty good, but he's kind of expensive. So I think it's probably at this, and then, you know, Bogdan and Buddy Hield. I guess you could go there if they find their shot, but I wouldn't do that in any sort of optimal lineup. I'd be looking as kind of a more contrarian, kind of MME type of play, getting them in the captain spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think I'm with you as far as a lot of these Kings. They're a little difficult to play, just very up and down. I do like, I mean, up pace matchup. So we have to understand that all these guys are going to boost. I don't mind the Holmes play. I just can't get on board unless I see him play more minutes. It's just
right.
It's been 24 minutes. It seems like every game, and it caps him. I actually probably would prefer a guy like Bjelica. I think he's going to get abused on defense, absolutely. But they're also going to need him, and they're going to need him, you know, desperately. They're not going to want to throw Holmes at a guy like Zion, and they're going to spend a lot of time with him on favors. And I mean, Len's working his way back. Harry Giles can play in there too. But they're going to need to stretch the floor, and I think that's going to be very crucial for them in this game, is going to be their outside shooting. So, you know, looking at some of those perimeter guys, looking at Bjelica is the way I think I would do it. You know, Buddy Hield played great in this matchup. That was when he necessarily wasn't in the doghouse, though. I think they gave him 39 minutes in the first time these teams faced off, and he came out here and almost dropped 50 DK points. So he's a great option. It's a great matchup. But outside of that last game against Dallas, he played 31 minutes, which is great. 20 shot attempts. We love to see it. Previous, you know, 3 games in the bubble, though, or 2 games in the bubble, we're looking at 20 minutes in each one of those games. So it really depends on how Walton feels that day. And that's the scary part. So, I mean, Buddy Hield makes for a better GPP than cash game. De'Aaron Fox, you can use an either or, in my opinion. Holmes, I'd probably reserve him more for GPPs on just the upside that he actually gets in minutes increase. And, you know, I think Bjelica probably can be used in either or. He's got a pretty decent floor as long as he's seeing 30+ minutes. You know, and I think he dropped about 28 DK points on them in only 21 minutes in the first go through. So more than a point.
Do you think Bjelica starts again this game or comes up?
Well, he came off the bench last game for Corey Joseph, which was shocking. No, I think he'll start just because if they're going to run out Zion in favors, they're not going to be able to get away with putting Harrison Barnes on Zion. I don't think they want to do that. Okay. And it doesn't make much sense to start Kojo to space the floor when you're talking about the Pelicans' best asset defensively is their perimeter and their two guard defenders, with Lonzo and Drew. I mean, I'm not a coach, but I would probably start Bledsoe. That's just my take on it. But we'll have to see. I mean, Walton does some pretty crazy things. The fact that he came out there and started Corey Joseph, which he did start the game off pretty well.
Right.
And I don't mind Bazemore. I think Bazemore is a guy that I always just look at in GPPs. I'll never trust him in cash games. He's a high risk, high reward guy. The price tag's up there, but once you drop down below 5K on pretty much either team outside of the two guys that we talked about, JJ Redick and I guess Bazemore, there's not a lot of upside built into these guys. Corey Joseph, if he's starting, yeah, sure, we can look at him. I don't mind looking at him if he's starting, but if he's coming off the bench again, I'll have no interest, and probably it for me in that game.
I think Bazemore would probably be my second favorite play on the Kings, just because he's cheap. He's cheaper than all of them. He's playing well in the restart. He's going to be in that 24 to 28 minute range. I think he would be the guy I would look to save some salary.
Yeah, he's a tournament play. It's some of those days he gets you like 6 assists, 3-4 steals, and all of a sudden 8 points in the actual scoring column doesn't look so bad because he ends up getting you almost 30 in DK because of the steals and the random defensive stats and rebounds. But
right,
this guard rotation, it's basically become whoever's hot. I think another reason why we saw Hield play minutes up in the 30s last game, even though he's in the doghouse, was because Bogdanovich was struggling in foul trouble extremely early, couldn't hit a shot if he felt it was bad. He really struggled mightily in that Dallas game, but
right.
We'll keep it moving. I don't want to sit here and beat on your Kings for too long, man. I feel bad. I don't think you can't help yourself. Are you from that area?
All I'll say is thank goodness I have DFS. That's all I gotta say.
So are you from near Sacramento, or are you?
Yeah, so I actually went to school at Sacramento State, and then I grew up about 2 hours north of Sacramento. So Northern California boy.
Was it like Weber? Who did it for you? Like you just local team had to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of just when I was getting interested in sports and started following teams. It was the golden era Kings and Vlade, Weber, Peja, Baby Christie, like Bobby Jackson off the bench. It was just so much fun to watch.
I'm a big Peja guy.
And then I've had to endure 13 years of misery as a Kings fan since. But hey,
maybe they'll turn around. You guys got some good young players. Just hopefully, I can't believe they passed up on Doncic as well. That's crazy.
I mean, that's the cherry on top, right? Just our rookie was home with an injury, and Luka drops 30, 20, and 10 on us. So.
All right, man. We could talk Kings for a while, but you probably take enough abuse.
Maybe another time.
Yeah, exactly, man. We're going to keep it moving. We got 5 games left to talk about. We're going to move on to the main slate. No spread available for this one due to injuries. We have the Miami Heat going against the Milwaukee Bucks. As far as injuries are concerned, Jimmy Butler has already been rolled out, dealing with a sore ankle or sore foot. Goran Dragic is coming in questionable. He's the one that's dealing with the sprained ankle. So he actually went in for x-rays. They came back negative. He could return, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up sitting. So that's the major news that we need to be concerned about on Miami. As far as Milwaukee, nobody's really, considered out right now. Brook Lopez was not active Tuesday, but I don't necessarily think. I think it was just a rest situation. I don't think there was any injury related to it. So he should be back, but we just kind of saw exactly what the Bucks did against the Nets. They were okay with losing a game, so I'm kind of proceeding with caution on a lot of these guys. And you got to also keep an eye on Wesley Matthews. He's been dealing with a sore calf. He's most likely going to sit, even though he's listed as questionable. So why don't we talk about this Miami Heat team? With Jimmy Butler out, possibly Goran Dragic, that's a lot of shot attempts and usage that are going to go around and against a tough defensive opponent. So why don't you tell me where you're going, if anywhere, on this team?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one thing I've been weighing this whole slate is, in the 2 later games, we have Portland and Denver. Both, the Nuggets are on the second end of a back-to-back. The Lakers are going to be on the second end of a back-to-back. So, those are kind of iffy minutes rotation. You might see Jokic, maybe Jokic rests a game, or minutes limited. So while I don't love ever attacking Milwaukee, I think we kind of have to look here for some plays. And like you said, just Dragic and Butler are two of the main shot creators on the Heat, and that usage has to go somewhere. And these guys are just so cheap. We'll have to watch news if Dragic is indeed ruled out. But I think you just kind of go down the line. I mean, I think I would start with Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, and Kelly Olynyk just as incredibly cheap plays. They're going to have the ball in their hands. Nunn and Hero are going to be part of their playoff rotation, so I could see them. The Heat wanting to get them going and kind of getting back into that midseason groove that they were in. And the thing with Kelly Olynyk is he did get the big price increase, but the way the Bucks scheme their defense is they take away the rim and they kind of force you to shoot threes and shoot jumpers. Like they have by far the best defense at the rim, but they also allow, I think, the fourth or fifth most shot attempts from three. So these guys like Tyler Hero, Kelly Olynyk, even Duncan Robinson, where most of their scoring value is dependent on 3-point shooting, I don't mind taking them in this spot just because of the way the Bucks scheme their defense towards players taking threes. And yeah, I mean, I think all these guys are honestly in play, but I think those three, Kelly Olynyk, Kendrick Nunn, or Kelly Olynyk and Tyler Hero, if Dragic is ruled in, and then if Dragic is ruled out, I think you add Kendrick Nunn. I think you can add Andre Iggy as a tournament play. I think you can add Jay Crowder in there for just. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like this whole team. Am I wrong? And all these guys below, $5K.
No, I think your analysis was pretty spot on. I like everything that you said as far as their defensive schemes and the way to attack this. The three guys you initially said are the three guys that were on my radar the most. And Olynyk, Nunn, and Hero Olynyk got a little bit of a price boost, but if he's going to start and keep starting and playing that amount of minutes, 30 plus, that's still a fair price, if not underpriced. And then we look at guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn, 4,100 for Nunn, 3,600 on DK for Hero. We're not investing a whole lot into these guys. So right. If it does get out of hand, we're not that worried about it. They can still make their value back in this amount of time. And then there's the off chance this game stays close. I mean, who's to say it's not after what just happened in Brooklyn? So I don't mind looking at either one of these guys or any one of those three guys. You mentioned Jay Crowder. He's another one of them. I know he doesn't have that big of a usage or a point per minute boost. The 2-3 guys that we're probably going to be looking at the most usage from would be Nunn, Nunn, Adebayo, and then probably Olynyk. All three of those guys average more than a DK point per minute. Adebayo's up to 1.3. And then Nunn has a 26.3% usage rate. Adebayo 22.5, and Hero has 26.7. So those three guys, I don't mind. Adebayo, just you have to spend on them. That's the thing. And the Bucks, as good as they are defensively, centers can sometimes do fairly well against them. Mostly just because they don't have that rebounding center. Robin starts, they do, right. But if Brook shies away from the basket. He loves to play that transition, lag behind kind of offense, sit at the top of the key and wait for that 3-point dump off. But we'll have to kind of monitor that starting lineup. Nonetheless, I think all four of those guys are in play that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're just too cheap, right? For guys who are playing in NBA, who are good players. They're all talented players. Like Kelly Olynyk, yeah, he got the price increase, but he kind of contributes everywhere. He's a pretty good rebounder. He's going to hit threes. He had 8 assists last game, and so he's a pretty decent passer. And all these guys, they're just going to be on the floor with two of their highest usage players potentially off the floor, and they're going to be getting 28 to 33 minutes on the floor. It is the best defense, but sometimes you kind of just have to take that context and use it.
Minutes equal money, baby.
Yep.
If you're cheap enough and you're getting the minutes, you don't necessarily need the average DK point per minute, depending on your price tag. But we mentioned 3-4 of those guys. Is there anybody you're willing to run it back with on Milwaukee?
I think it would just be Giannis. He's just the way he's played in the restart. He looks unstoppable at this point. I do think Miami has one of the better defenders in the league to potentially match up with him in Bam Adebayo. So I think that's how I would use Bam in tournaments. Is I would do like a Giannis, Bam, with a couple other Heat value plays in there as kind of as a game stack type of situation. But yeah, I mean, the rest of these guys kind of, unless we get someone ruled out for rest, I'm not all that interested in just Giannis, just as as it might be a situation where I'm not seeing very many other places for us to spend. So I think he could be a good tournament play.
Yeah, I think if you're going to play Giannis, you just have to correlate it, like you said, with a guy like Adebayo. I'm worried about the minutes. I'm honestly worried about the minutes for all these guys in Milwaukee. After seeing them shut down, most of their starters after 16 minutes in that last game against the Nets, I get they're playing a depleted Nets team and everything. But a loss is a loss, and it doesn't matter if it's against the Nets or it's against Miami. Milwaukee knows where they're at in the standings. They know that they don't want to risk anybody getting hurt. They're already dealing with something going on with Brook Lopez, unless it was, in fact, just a rest game. So I don't have a lot of confidence in any of them. Bledsoe's still working his way back. Giannis, though, anytime that anybody's ever worried about it is when he makes the most sense. There's a lot of studs on this slate. We're going to talk about Luka. We're going to talk about Jokic, the guys in Houston, the guys in LA. So there's a lot of places people to go. And when that's the case, Giannis always ends up low owned. He's going to be the great pivot if you need to use him. And if you're going to play him, just make sure you correlate your lineups.
Would you just keep him in tournaments? Do you think he can get into optimals?
I think it would be tournaments for me.
Okay.
Just simply because of the other options that we have. If he played 30 minutes last game, it'd be a different story. But seeing that he played 16, I get the context of the situation going against the Brooklyn Nets G League team, but they're not playing for anything. We're kind of seeing that a little bit with the Lakers recently, where you see LeBron is not really playing aggressive. He's not really doing anything but getting his team acclimated and getting them ready, making sure everybody's good to go. And I think the Bucks are starting to transition into that gear. They played hard the first few games. They might play hard the last game, just as the last prep game or so. But I think they're going to coast for the next few. Next game, though,
that makes sense.
Indiana Pacers going against the Phoenix Suns. We do have a game total of 228.5. We have Indiana being favored by 3 points. There is some injury news. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable right now, sore neck. I'm not really too concerned about it because he's mentioned that he missed that first game with the sore neck, and he said it wasn't a big deal. He felt like he could have played. So we have to monitor it. Maybe it's a rest thing and they decide to rest him, but he didn't seem too worried about it. So I'm expecting him to pretty much play. And then Victor Oladipo looks like he's good to go. So it's just the usual injuries: Jeremy Lamb, Domantas Sabonis, and I think we're supposed to be actually seeing some Goga soon. So Goga's questionable. And I know that they're going to want to eventually work him up and get him some run. They want to be able to get some double big lineups out there without Sabonis, and they're going to want to work on that lineup. So keep an eye on once Goga's back. He's going to be slowly acclimated, play very little minutes, but they definitely want to get him some run once he's back on the court. And as far as Phoenix, Kelly Oubre Jr. is questionable. Again, I'd be extremely shocked if he ends up playing. Don't think that's going to be happening. And then it looks like Aaron Baines will be sitting out due to knee soreness. Also probably slightly conditioning, but that's all we have to worry about over there. So, man, Sonny Santino, he calls them the TJ Warrens. I'm going to ask you, who do you like on TJ Warren's Indiana Pacers?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the Brogdon free square that we've been getting over the first week, where he was 5,400 and like 5,200. Unfortunately, that's pretty much gone. He's up to 6,800. I think my favorite play is going to be Victor Oladipo at 5,500. Just because if he's there and if they're kind of serious about this restart and serious about getting their playoff rotation going, I think eventually you're going to start to see him get his minutes ramped up. Wouldn't surprise me to see him, 30, 32 minutes. And just for the type of player he is, he's their lead ball handler. He's their lead guy. And if the Pacers want to do anything in the playoffs, it kind of rests on what kind of shape Oladipo is in and how well he's performing. So, and kind of the rest of these guys, TJ Warren at 8,400 is, he's been Michael Jordan in his prime, but I don't know. I can't pay 8,400 for TJ Warren, and he's gonna bring a ton of ownership. That's to me is just a pretty easy fade. So Yeah, I think it's Victor Oladipo. I think it's Miles Turner at 6,200, and kind of everyone else is just a little too expensive.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Brogdon, he's a little bit of a price increase at 68. I mean, they were giving us that free scare before. I think at 68 we can think about it a little bit. Still, pretty good spot. Oladipo, I think he makes a little bit more sense for me in cash games. Just not necessarily. We know he's a point per minute guy. Just not knowing exactly what his ceiling could be for minutes. Still has the upside to get you some GPP, like a 6 or 7, 8x. I could see it happening. But he just has a 5x written all over him night in and night out on the games that he's been playing. So I have no issues there. And man, I'm with you on the fade on TJ Warren, but I've never felt, so worried about doing such a thing, going against his former team and everything. And
I mean, he just can't keep shooting like this, right? Like that's right.
I said that after the first one. I said that after the second one. And now here we are, and TJ Warren's 8,400, and he's been playing a boatload of minutes, and he's been taking a boatload of shots. He's been hitting his threes, and more surprisingly, he's been getting the defensive numbers. And I think that's the biggest difference maker in his value is the steals and the blocks. And while I don't think the pace he's on is, realistic, he's doing it, and it's not a bad matchup either. So I'm not going to necessarily cross him off, but he's not going to be the first guy I'm putting in there. I'll probably be, lower on the ownership total than the rest of the field. I anticipate that, but I'll probably have him in like a pivot lineup or two. It's a good matchup, and there's going to be some other guys on the other side I have some interest in. But that's really it for me. I'm not really looking at Miles Turner in this matchup. Aaron Holiday, if Brogdon and Oladipo are both there, he's kind of a little bit of middling of the pack. I don't really have too much interest in him either.
Yeah, those kind of everyone else, Brock Holiday, Justin Holiday, all those guys kind of just aren't in play anymore if Brogdon and Oladipo are playing.
All right, man. And what about this Phoenix Suns team? We got some decent price tags on these guys. Anybody standing out to you?
Yeah. So kind of on our preseason pod, when I talked about the Suns, my take on them was I didn't really think these guys were going to get all that extended of a run. I thought they were kind of just going to show up, make sure they stay healthy and get out. But all of a sudden let me check. They're just a half game behind the Blazers. I think they've won every single one of their restart games. So I mean, they're right in the thick of this thing. So I think you can start really looking at the Suns and fire them up. It is a tougher defensive matchup against the Pacers, but yeah, I mean, Ayton at 7,200 really stands out. And what I really like on DK is he does have that power forward center eligibility, where I think that drastically improves his value, where you can potentially play 3 centers. I think Booker could be a potential spend in both cash games and tournaments.
You said what I was thinking, man. Ayton, the power forward eligibility is what makes the difference to me. 7,200, I think, is a great price tag. I don't love the matchup. I don't love the pace. He struggled in this matchup earlier in the season, but it was a little bit of a different scenario when the Pacers clogged the paint with 2 bigs when they had Sabonis there as well. So I have some interest in Ayton. I think Booker's always in play. He is pretty much one of those matchup-proof players at this stage in his career where he can just get it done against anybody. Yes, Victor Oladipo is good at defense. So is Malcolm Brogdon. They could throw the kitchen sink at him. Booker could still get his shot up if he wants to. So 8,300 is a fair price tag. And then the other guy that kind of stands out to me a little bit would be Cam Johnson. Knowing that how much the Pacers are just relying and leaning on TJ Warren at the 4, just makes more sense for Cam Johnson to see more run than Dario Saric in this game. And probably play close to 36, 37 minutes. I mean, they've been running this dude hard. And 2 games ago,
it's been very surprising.
They love him. They absolutely love him. I mean, there's a reason why he was a little bit of a shocker in the draft when people saw some of the names that he was taken ahead of. But he's a guy that they talk about his work ethic. They preach about how he does the little things, and a lot of teams love that. He doesn't make mistakes, and he doesn't force shots. One thing that TJ Warren used to get criticized for on Phoenix. So I could see him playing a little bit more of the 4. The rebounds have been up the past 4 games. I wouldn't expect a ton of offense. Decent price tag. I wouldn't go out of my way to jam him in there. Anything 4,900.
It's a little steep, I think, on Cam Johnson. But again, I think if you're kind of doing a mini game stack here, I think he's a great piece. I think he's a great piece to add.
Yeah, and maybe if you just don't have any, like he's one of those guys I'd fill in last spot. If I had 5K left, I'm looking at some of the options, and then that's when he kind of steps into play for me. I'm not going to go on my way to play him. Obviously, I think Ayton or Booker would be one of those types of scenarios, but definitely not Cam Johnson. Upside, just not there yet at this stage of his career. A little too shy with the shot taking. But we'll keep it moving, man. We have, wow, we're at the halfway point. I guess that means we should give a nice quick shout out to our presenting sponsors at Manscaped. Go over to Manscaped, check them out, guys. Use the promo code HoopBall20, HOOPBALL20, to get $20 off your order plus free shipping. If you guys haven't already checked out the Lawnmower 3.0 or all of their great conditioners and other products, I highly recommend it, guys. I speak on it. It is a luxury, and your significant others will thank us later. And then we also wouldn't be us if we didn't shout out our good buddies over at MyBookie. I've been absolutely crushing MyBookie lately, and it's mostly due to the guys over at Hoopball Gaming. Shout out! I think they went about 4 or 5-0 tonight, but they've been hot, man. And you can just go onto MyBookie, use the promo code Hoopball, get the goodies, get the rewards. They match your deposit bonus, and it's free money to play with. So I mean, it's just do it up, guys. I mean, try it out. You don't have to bet big. It's just fun to do, especially if you're trying to get a parlay. Maybe you lost your GPP. You don't want to do one of those showdown late lineups. You want to just throw some money on the game. You could do that in NFL, MLB, NBA. You could do them all. NFL's right around the corner, guys. Only a month away, and we will be talking about that as well. So check them out. We have, my man, 3 games left. Los Angeles Clippers going against the Dallas Mavericks. This game does have a game total of 231.5, with the Clippers being favored by 4 points. So we will start with them. Montrezl Harrell is still going to be away from the team, so he is not going to be playing. And then we also have Patrick Beverley dealing with the calf soreness. He has already been ruled out. So 2 major players for this team's out. They do have Lou Williams back, but where are we looking for this team?
I think you just keep going back to the main cogs. They haven't really had their minutes limited all that much in the restart, other than the blowout game against the Pelicans. Kind of seems like Doc is kind of getting these guys ready for what their playoff minute expectation is going to be. And the Dallas defense has just been absolutely atrocious. Like they can't stop anybody. So I think Kawhi and Paul George, the only issue is it's kind of difficult since they're only small forward on DraftKings, which is weird with how they do their MPE and why these guys who are 2 of the most versatile players in the NBA, they only have one position. I don't know, but I think it's Kawhi and Paul George, and unfortunately Reggie Jackson is unplayable at 5,800. Lou Williams, I just don't think he's going to get on the court enough to pay off that 5K tag. Eventually they're going to start ramping him up, but again, I think he's probably going to hang around that 23, 24 minutes for a while. They beefed up Zubac after his really big game. Up to 4,800. So yeah, I think you just go back to the well on Kawhi and Paul George and take advantage of these really good price tags.
That's it, man. I'm with you. 2 fantastic price tags. I think both these guys are severely underpriced. I'm not touching Reggie Jackson with a 10-foot pole. It's the price tag. It's also, the fact that Patrick Beverley's out and now that Lou Williams is back. That's only bad news for Reggie Jackson. There's 2 scenarios in this situation. He starts and he's playing alongside of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and he gets 0 usage, or he's playing alongside of Lou Williams, who's their known shot taker off the bench, and sees a little bit of dip in usage. When I was liking Reggie Jackson was when he was coming off the bench with Patrick Beverley starting and having that whole second unit to himself. So and now we also have to pay up for him. I'm all set with that. And then, the only other guy I could possibly consider, which I don't have all that much confidence in, would be like Marcus Morris. We've been seeing him play a little bit of minutes, played 36 in the last one against Phoenix and did fairly well with 28 DK points. This is a matchup where we know that the Mavs like to run out a little bit of Kleber, a little bit of Dorian Finney-Smith and Porzingis. And in that kind of scenario, we'll probably see Morris touch close to 30 minutes, if not maybe a little bit more. So I don't mind checking him out for 4,200. But I really like Paul George and I really like Kawhi Leonard. I'll probably have at least one of these guys in most of my lineups.
Yeah, I think good call on Marcus Morris. I didn't realize he was still 4,200. That's just a really great tag. I think he's one of those value plays you should be considering in all formats.
Yeah, and it's Marcus Morris, so proceed with caution, guys.
Right.
He hasn't been gelling too well with this team since he's been there. He hasn't had many big games like we're used to seeing when his days in Detroit's, where he put up one of these random, 22 in like 9 games with a steal and a block or so. Those days are done on this team, but at 4,200, I could see him getting you 20 to 25 DK points, and a nice little 5-6x return doesn't hurt anybody. Dallas Mavs, man. 11-3 for Luka. Can you pay that?
I don't. This might come back to bite me, but I don't think so. He's been playing kind of these insane minutes. He's played 44 minutes, 38 minutes, and 42 minutes in his 3 restart games. I understand that's probably what he's going to be playing once playoffs come around, but I don't really understand why Carlisle would keep extending him like that in these games.
Oh,
and kind of the thing with the Mavericks is, they're currently the 7th seed, and they're 2.5 games behind the Rockets. So it's not all that likely they catch the Rockets for the 6th seed. So they're kind of already locked into that 7th seed. So I mean, he's the most expensive player on the slate. I think eventually he's going to come down in minutes to 30, maybe 34, 35 range, just so they don't run him into the ground before the playoffs start. Obviously, Luka, he is the highest. Him and Giannis and Harden had the highest ceilings on the slate. I think you could probably get some decent ownership in tournaments just because people are going to look at the one-on-one individual defensive matchup against Kawhi and Paul George, and those are 2 of the better guys in basketball who could potentially sell him a little bit. But I think as of now, I will be fading Luka.
Okay, man. I don't mind it. I'm probably the biggest Luka stan over here at Hoopball. Resident Mavs fan as well. And it's just a tough matchup, and we're paying a premium. He's coming off a triple-double. He also did hurt his finger in the game. He then, he came out for a couple of minutes, came right back in, still played a boatload, and dropped a fantastic triple-double, so I don't know how much it slowed it down. But it's worth noting, and it's just, you can't draw up on paper a worse matchup going against 2 of the league's best perimeter defenders, 2 of the best lockdown guys that could stick with him and cause him trouble. And he has to go against them. This looks like it could be the matchup and the preview of what we're going to see in playoffs as well in the first round. If the Mavs do hold on to this, 7th seed, they will be going against the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs. So another thing worth noting is maybe Carlisle says, I don't want to throw the kitchen sink at them today because we're going to have to save a lot of the bags and the tricks in the bag to have first
Good
round.
point.
So. And you can look at that from both angles, but if I'm Doc Rivers, I'm saying, okay, they have one tool that can beat us, and it's Luka Doncic. How do we stop it? So I'm with you. I'd actually prefer Porzingis in this matchup at 8,500, just knowing that he should be able to have his way with these bigs over here, and that Luka's going to have his hands full. It just seems like it's going to be a picture-perfect matchup for a guy like Porzingis. I'm not going to go overboard. He is priced up at 8,500, but if I was playing one of the Mavs out of those 2, it would probably be Porzingis over Luka Doncic at a point-per-dollar standpoint. And outside of that, man, I'm not touching anything else. Seth Curry is still questionable over here. Actually doubtful at this point, got updated. So, I'm not going to go chasing Trey Burke. A couple people went and chased after that big game that he had the first game in the bubble. Right. I'm good with that. I'll leave that for other people. And Hardaway Jr., he always has that tournament appeal and upside, just so scoring dependent. Where I even in the game where he played 42 minutes and scored 22 actual points, he didn't even put up 30 DK points because no steals, no blocks, no assists, and that's the prototypical games from Tim Hardaway. So you're going to get very, very scoring dependent player. So that's it for me, man. Porzingis, number 1 play over here. And then, I'm never going to say don't play Doncic, but I probably won't have too many shares of him, if any at all.
I think another guy who's kind of be in the value consideration for me, and potentially a really good pivot off Kelly Olynyk at the same price, is Dorian Finney-Smith. The way the Clippers match up with, Marcus Morris and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they kind of need the rangy defensive ability of Dorian Finney-Smith, and he's been rebounding like a fiend. And he's just kind of on the floor for a ton of minutes. So I'm not sure if he's in cash consideration because I'll probably just play Kelly Olynyk at the same price. But I think he could be a really interesting tournament pivot off him.
Ah, man, I like that call. I didn't even notice the rebounds have been there. I've been watching the games, and I haven't been seeing his rebounds like that. So that's a great call. Great pivot play, too. Nobody ever owns Dorian Finney-Smith. It's just he's so used to not having upside. He's usually just a wet noodle. But if he's going to keep getting rebounds like this in double digits, I mean, we have to consider him at least a little bit. Good call. I like that, man. So there you go. I trade you Marcus Morris for Dorian Finney-Smith, and now we're all set.
Hey, perfect.
So.
Making all the money.
That's it, man. We'll keep it. I doubt either one of those guys end up in either one of our lineups at the end of the day. We'll see. But I just like to keep it as honest as possible. While they're in play, I'd have to see if I land on them. So far in my pre-shell builds, I haven't landed on either one of them just yet. But we have the Portland Trailblazers going against the Denver Nuggets. No line has been released, and that's mostly because of the Jamal Murray news that we will be waiting on. He missed that last game today. It's still dealing with a little bit of hamstring soreness, and it's a back-to-back, so we have to keep an eye on it because if he was questionable for today's game, almost played, there's the off chance that they just wanted to rest him on the first half of the back-to-back, and maybe they play him. Either way, I probably won't be looking at him. Looking at limited minutes. Will Barton and Gary Harris, both are expected to be out as well. And then on Portland, we're good to go. It's just the same usual guys, that have been out. Rodney Hood, Trevor Ariza. So take us through this, man. We'll go through, I guess, the Portland Trailblazers first. Coming off of a big game, a big win. Carmelo Anthony turning back the clock, hitting one of the biggest shots that he's probably hit in the past 5 years. I mean, could you look at him 5,600? Do you have any interest in the game-winning Melo?
I mean, the dude's on the floor forever. I mean, we know he can. We know he likes to chuck. I don't think I'm going there in cash games, or in any sort of optimal build. But I think he's a guy you kind of have to include in your MME mix, just because this Portland rotation is one of the few we can really nail down and be like, okay, they're playing like 8 guys in the rotation, but really only 6 are getting big minutes, and they're kind of just rotating through those 6 main guys. And 5,600 for a dude who's going to take 14 to 18 shots and be on the floor for 35 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I think, especially with the kind of a high range of outcome player like Melo, I'm in for tournaments.
All right, man. Hey, listen. He's been playing fantastic ball. The shot attempts, they've been solid enough. He gets it done in multiple different ways. Sometimes it's a big rebounding game. I have a little interest. I'm not going to go overboard on him. I think this is going to be a tough matchup for Portland. I mean, the positive news is that it's a back-to-back for Denver, and second half of one. And Portland needs to win this game a lot more than Denver. Denver's secretly gripping right up on the Clippers. I think they're only about a half game back from the Clippers at this point. And vying for that 2 seed might be important to them. So, this game has a little bit of relevance for everybody. So I don't think we could just go and assume that Denver's not going to play. Lillard, a little bit priced out for me at 9,700, but knowing that the circumstances, how great he's been playing, it's Damian Lillard, he's always in play, but there's just a few other priced up guys I think I'd be going to. What do you think about Nurkic, though? He's been on a tear, man. We've been seeing the price jump up. He just went from 85. Now he's up to 89. He scored at least 50 points in the 3 games he's played since returning to the bubble, or actually since returning to the NBA. So why don't you give me your take on Nurkic? Can you stomach playing him at 8,900? He does have that power forward eligibility.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if he was center only, he'd probably be a little too expensive for cash game construction. But if you think about if you maybe play him and Ayton, and you can realistically get 4 centers on this slate, and there's some really great center plays that we want to play, and he's probably the only guy that they don't want to extend into like the mid 30s, mid 40s, but that doesn't really matter for Nurk. He's just one of the best fantasy point per minute players in the NBA. And as far as the matchup against Jokic, there's some foul risk, and Nurkic kind of does come built in with foul risk immediately. So I did play around with him in some cash game optimal builds. I wasn't quite landing on him, but I mean, just I don't think you can really ignore any of these main Blazers guys, just with how locked in their minutes are. Just they have to play hard every game. You know, they're right there to get into. I think they're only one game back of the Grizzlies. Let me double check that. So they're only one game back of the Grizzlies for the 8th seed. So they might not even have to keep fighting for that 9th seed. I mean, you kind of have to start with all these Portland guys and kind of work from there as your major spends for this slate.
Yeah, I think I could play Nurkic. I don't mind it. It's expensive. Definitely not probably going to be my optimal build, but I think at that price tag, a lot of people are going to jump off, especially knowing Denver's defense is generally pretty tough. But we're talking about a guy going against his former team. You know, he gets up for these types of matchups. You got to keep in mind at one point Denver chose Jokic over Nurkic, and he played against them in practice. And I think this is a decent matchup. Now that Jokic's a little skinny, Nurkic's got a little bit of weight and muscle on him, so he might be able to push skinny Jokic around. If it was chubby Jokic, it might be a different story. But I really don't mind.
The revenge game.
It's tough. It's not really as much revenge knowing that everybody's playing in Orlando. If it's home court and a little thing's different, right. that comes into play. But it's just the caveat and the benefit of knowing that he used to practice with these guys. He played with most of them. He knows how Jokic plays. I'm sure vice versa. But Nurkic, he's generally seems like he's that guy that's got something to prove. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him get up at least a little bit in this one. But that price tag's tough. The power forward eligibility, you said it, it's kind of what saves his value for me. But then I'm not looking at McCollum. 7,900. It's not a bad price tag or anything. He's just that one dude, man. I struggle to ever get McCollum right. The days I play him are like last game against Houston. Comes out, puts up 35, which isn't a bad game, but it's not even a 5x return on what we're paying. So I don't think I'm going to play McCollum for a little while. If he beats me, he beats me. But I wanted to talk about, I guess, a little bit of Gary Trent Jr. I mean, 2 back-to-back games where the minutes have been there. 35 minutes, 34 minutes. Both those games, he's put up at least 22 DK points. Almost like a Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of stat line, very scoring dependent. But is he somebody that you can keep in your player pool if you need a little bit of value?
Absolutely. Again, he's kind of where I started with this site was working through Portland and kind of building from there. It seems like he's their kind of their main backup wing for just about everybody. That he kind of slots in, subs in for Dame, subs in for Melo, subs in for CJ, and they kind of just move everyone around to accommodate that. And yeah, I'm in. I mean, he is a little bit of a volatile fantasy player just because almost all his value is tied to his 3-point shooting. So I don't know if I'd quite go there in cash games just because, if he shoots 2 for 12 from 3, he's going to have a hard time getting to value. And even last game, he shot 4 for 9 from 3 for 22 DK points at 4,300. That's good. That's not amazing though. But yeah, I think he's locked in. I think he's locked into this backup wing role. He's going to play a ton of minutes again. And kind of his outcome is really easy to predict. If he shoots really well, he's going to smash. If he doesn't, he's gonna bust. And I think he does have somewhat of a built-in floor just because he's going to play 32 to 35 minutes. So yeah, I'm in for sure.
All right, man. I think pretty much spot up shooter. That's basically his role at this point. He's not going to be aggressive when he has either CJ or Dame on the court. He's going to defer 90% of the time and wait for his open jumper. So I don't mind him. I think you hit it on the head. More of a GPP than a cash game guy just because of that scoring dependency. If the shot's off, you're not getting anywhere near your value. But we'll slide right over, man.
I think one guy before we move on to Denver, Zach Collins has kind of been a staple of the cash game discussion for basically every game he's played. He's kind of he's been too cheap. Doesn't put up a ton of shots, I think this is a little better matchup for him too than Houston or Boston. Just because Michael Porter Jr. is a little bit bigger, the Nuggets do play bigger, so he'll have more people to guard. And this guy, he does everything on the court. He's a good shooter. He can hit the three. He's a decent passer. He's a good rebounder. He does get blocks and steals. So I think that's kind of an easy built-in pivot if you're building lineups, where I would put Zach Collins into kind of your optimal cash teams, and then I think Gary Trent would be a really easy pivot off Zach Collins.
Good as
so
well,
I think
brother.
it'd be popular.
I like it, and the Denver does play fairly big, so should be getting the minutes no matter what, as long as Millsap's on the court. I don't see what better matchup they'd have than Zach Collins on him.
Right.
Let's slide right over there then, man. Good call. Denver Nuggets. Jokic 95. We just talked about Nurkic. Who would you rather play?
Jokic off the back-to-back. I didn't realize they were only a half game behind the Clippers. That kind of changes. If depends if they want to play the Rockets or the Mavericks. They're probably a little. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. I would
say they probably rather play the Mavs. I think the Rockets could just cause anybody problems. While they're so one-sided, their defense is terrible. The firepower that they have can give anybody a headache.
Right. I think I would probably rather play Nurkic just because he does have that power forward center. He's a little bit cheaper. Jokic is coming off the back-to-back. He didn't play a ton. He only played 32 minutes today against San Antonio. But Malone has come out repeatedly and said kind of his goal is to get through this seeding process with everyone healthy. So I don't really see how Jokic would get to a minutes ceiling here in this spot. Like I see him closer to maybe like 33, 34 rather than 38, 39. So I think I'm going Nurk over Jokic.
I think I'm right there with you. So I'm in the same boat, but I think the big news, and I kind of buried the lead on this one, is going to be Michael Porter Warren. Michael Porter Jr. doing his best TJ Warren over the last two games, just coming out, laying the world on fire, shooting fantastic, 57% today, and then shot 75% against OKC. Put up more than 50 DK points in both those games, and he comes in at $200 of an increased salary from today. Man, he's going to draw a lot of ownership. He's going to draw a lot of attention. And it almost feels like I'm getting smacked in the face with another TJ Warren situation where it's like, everything in my GPP mind tells me to hop off. But
right.
I love this kid. I mean, I've been touting him for quite some time. I think he fell in the draft. Yes, obviously he had injuries, and that was the reason why. But this is a guy that at one point was getting talked about like the first overall pick. So I'm all for Michael Porter Jr. I think he's going to be an absolute stud, a future all-star for many years to come. I think all of that is going to happen. He already looks like he's the second best option on the team next to Jokic, even when Jamal Murray comes back. So
yeah, he's been absolutely incredible. Like the shooting is going to regress, but kind of what you love is he has 12 rebounds and 15 rebounds in the last couple games. So while he's kind of cleaning up the glass, while Jokic is doing his playmaking thing. Yeah, I think the big difference though here is price. Like with TJ Warren has to be your building block piece, and then Michael Porter Jr. at 6,400. You can have a couple studs, and Porter is kind of your mid-tier player in a lot of these lineups. He's not that same price tag. Yeah, he gets a much better matchup. It's up tempo against Portland. He has Melo defending him, skinny Melo, bubble Melo, whatever you want to call him. But it's like I love attacking Melo on defense at this point in his career. Yeah, I think Porter was after looking at Portland, he was the next guy in for me. He's locked into this role right now, and he's one of the young guys. I don't think he's really going to be affected all that much by a minutes limitation. Maybe they're a little bit cautious with his injury history, But, the 44 minutes and 36 minutes, that kind of suggests otherwise, if they were really worried about limiting him at all. I think the one other thing in favor of Porter is Malone came out before yesterday's game, about Murray, Harris, and Barton, that those guys would miss the game if it were a playoff game. So it wasn't a situation where they were just kind of being cautious with these guys. I think these guys are actually hurt. They're not really all that close to being ready, or they're just not ready to come back. So maybe even if those guys did come back, or if Murray did come back, I think he would be on a pretty severe minutes limit. So I don't think that would eat too much into Porter's usage that he's had the last couple games.
I'm with you. I think no matter what, he's going to get his shot attempts at this point. Malone also came out and pretty much said, like, can you guys, I think his quote was, he was talking to reporters, he's like, can you believe that this guy did not make the Rising Stars game? Like, it just made no sense to him. He knows what kind of stud that he has on his hands. He knows how talented Michael Porter Jr. is. So I think he's going to utilize him as much as he possibly could. He has the youth. He has the fresh legs. He has everything else going for him. Not necessarily worried as much on a back-to-back for a guy like him. Guys I'd be worried about would be more like Paul Millsap and guys like that. And even Millsap, he only played 16 minutes during today's game. So did not have to get a full complement of minutes, so he should be probably ready to play. I wouldn't expect a ton of minutes from him either, though. Maybe around that 26 to 28. Decent, cash option. Doesn't necessarily have a ton of GPP upside. I think you're looking at like a 30-point ceiling from him.
Right.
And then, I think we have to talk about Monte Morris as long as Jamal Murray's out. It just seems like he's locking in. Feels like a fantastic cash game option. Back-to-back games with 30 points on the dot and 35-plus minutes in both those games. So that's probably it for me. Jeremy Grant, decent option. He played 30 minutes in back-to-back games. But as long as him and Millsap are both healthy, they're going to eat into each other's value.
Yeah, I mean, Grant and Millsap, I think that sort of just feels like a who's playing better, and whoever's playing better gets the minutes sort of a situation. And I definitely agree on Monte Morris. 40. He was a free square a couple games ago when he was 3,500. He actually went down in price for a much better matchup, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Just 4,700 for a starting guard and a guy who he just has to play. If Murray's, the Nuggets are so thin on wings that it's 35 minutes, starting guard, good defensive matchup. It's like it doesn't really matter who the name is. Like that's just kind of who we're looking for in optimal lineups.
All right, brother. We'll keep it moving for the last game of the night. No spread for this one either, and it's because we have major injury news to talk about with the Houston Rockets going against the Los Angeles Lakers. Russell Westbrook is questionable, and he's dealing with a bruised right quad. So, we don't like to see it. Anytime Westbrook is questionable or sitting, we know what the chalk is, and it's James Harden. I think we should just get it out of the open. Eric Gordon's out as well. He's going to have more usage than he knows what to do with. The shot attempts should be there. I don't care about the matchup. I don't care about how important the game is to either team. We know D'Antoni is going to play James Harden 34-plus minutes. He does it. He'll do it in a preseason game. Why wouldn't he do it now? And if he's 10-7, that's an underpriced price tag for a guy that could have a usage rate of close to like 45% on a night with Westbrook out. So I'll look at Harden if Westbrook's out. I think we can look at Harden even if he's in, if Westbrook's in, but probably would ease back on him if Westbrook is in. I think there's a few other guys that we mentioned that have very capable ownership and deserve so. So that's pretty much it for me, though. I mean, if Westbrook's also out, we see Austin Rivers and Ben McLemore and Jeff Green. They'll all get a bump. The usage is going to have to get distributed. I imagine Jeff Green will take his shots. Remains to be determined whether it be Austin Rivers or Ben McLemore that joins the starting lineup. If it's Ben McLemore, I don't mind looking at Ben McLemore. I prefer him over Austin Rivers just because we know Ben McLemore is not going to be shy to shoot. But both of them near minimum salary price. If either one of them starts, they become viable options, especially in cash games. I think where we can kind of take advantage if
people just really follow the news, and they kind of plan for Westbrook being out. Is the good thing is we do have viable pivots, in the Portland game, because I assume we'll find out before then where you can go down to Dame, and then people are just going to want to play Giannis. They're going to want to play Luka, so they're not going to leave. They're not going to leave room for Harden, and there isn't enough value really to play two of these super studs on this slate. So kind of my initial builds were leaning towards leaving room open for Harden, leaving room potential, for Damian Lillard as kind of my two priority spends of the slate. And then, if, we do get that Westbrook news kind of later on in the day, that's just Yahtzee over people who decided to play Giannis or Luka as their super spend.
I like it.
And I guess one question in tournaments, would you rather, I guess in cash games too, because this is kind of a question I've been thinking about, is would you rather play House or Kelly Olynyk?
I'd probably go Kelly O. Just, the fact that Kelly O is a little bit more aggressive. Daniel House may get a slight bit more usage with all these other guys out. If Westbrook, Gordon out, but he's still not that assertive. He needs the rebounds to really fall his way. So I'd probably lean Kelly O, but I think that's also the way a lot of other people would lean. So Kelly O is probably the better cash game. If you wanted to pivot off him, I guess you could look at House in tournaments, but I'd probably still prefer Kelly O in tournaments as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. If you're just looking for that ownership leverage in the large field lottery, I think getting to a guy like House definitely makes sense, especially if we get that Russ out. There's just going to be more shots around to go for all these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, Covington would also see a decent amount of usage. It's going to be a tough matchup for him. But 6,500 is not a bad price tag if Russell Westbrook is out. So he's definitely a viable option. I don't expect him to draw a lot of ownership. People are just going to say, well, he's going against Anthony Davis. I want nothing to do with that. But it's still not a bad price tag for the usage. He's a guy that gets it done defensively. He can do the rebounds. He can do the steals, blocks. He gets it done in so many different ways that if he's going to get a couple more shot attempts, it only gives him a little bit more upside. So wouldn't gravitate towards him, a whole lot, but I definitely could see myself having a share or two of them in the lineup that maybe I'm not playing Harden. Probably wouldn't pay him together, but if I'm paying up for one of those other guys and I still want some decent exposure to this game with Westbrook being out, that's kind of where he steps into that role for me.
And I think another thing with Covington is I think he'd be one of the guys, if Westbrook was out, to kind of take on some more shot attempts. And he's $100 more than Michael Porter Jr., who we think is probably going to be one of the highest owned players on the slate. So, I mean, once again, in your MMV builds and your tournament builds, if you have a super chalky lineup and you're looking to differentiate, I think Robert Covington, because we should have that news by then that if Russ is sitting the game or not, Covington's another one of those guys where he has a huge range of outcomes that, he can get a bunch of those blocks and steals and hit a bunch of threes that, it's conceivable he can beat Porter and Porter's outcome at just a fraction of the ownership.
Oh, yeah, easily. I think that's a great call. That's actually a really great pivot. Nice mention. What about this LA team? Anybody over there? I mean, it's usually the two major players between Davis and LeBron, but I mean, I've been staying away from these guys with everything that's been going on as far as minutes and usage. I think, I don't mind looking at, if I preferred one of them, it'd be Davis in this matchup just because he could really abuse them into the ground if he wanted to. Played great against them in the first matchup, dropped 66 DK points in 40 minutes. So that's probably it, though. Kyle Kuzma, he's been playing fairly well, but we have so many options in that 4K range or so where I would just prefer, I think Davis is really the only guy I'm looking at on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a team or candidates for guys who we might get a surprise hit tomorrow, I think someone on this Lakers team would be the favorites. Even then, I just don't think they really care all that much about these seeding games anymore. I think it's more of especially, we're still I think everyone still has like 4 or 5 games left. So, they're not really ready to start really ramping these guys up to playoff minutes yet. I think they're more worried about staying healthy. So even if these guys do play, I think you're looking at maximum 32, 33 minutes. When, we have Harden is a couple $100 more. You have Luka, who's about, $1,000 to $800 more. Giannis. I'd rather go to Dame. I'd rather go balanced. I don't see why you would prioritize LeBron or Davis at these tags.
No, I can't knock you for it. I think Davis will probably see a decent low ownership compared to a lot of these other guys. So I could see him, if Westbrook plays, being a really solid pivot to those people who just plugged in James Harden, expecting Westbrook to sit. He ends up playing. I could see that happening. I could see Davis being a decent pivot. I think in a vacuum, I'd still prefer Harden. But this is a fantastic matchup for him. I mean, they really have nobody to match up with his size. If they wanted to run him at the 5, he could just eat PJ Tucker for lunch.
Yeah, I mean, it's Davis is obviously one of the guys who can get there in 30 minutes. But it's for cash games especially, I'm completely out. I think in tournaments you can do it in like a 50,000 person tournament, just the MME lottery. I think having a little bit of Davis definitely makes some sense, but just in single entry 3 max cash games, the Lakers are they're just a fade for me.
All right, brother. Well, that's it. We'll round this up. We've already been going pretty long, so we appreciate everybody for listening. I think we got a pretty good understanding. This looks like it's gonna be a pretty fun slate too. So, if you guys have a sec, if you guys give us a rate, review, thumbs up, all that good stuff on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, iHeartRadio, wherever you might be listening, we really appreciate that. And then give us a follow on Twitter. You can find me at Michael Patra, MikeApotria. And Aaron, why don't you let the good people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at Asmus Sports, ASMUS SPORTS on Twitter.
All right, man. Well, it was great having you on. I look forward to us speaking some more shows. And again, Aaron's going to be doing a lot of our layup line daily articles for our premium subscribers. So for those who just can't get enough of his good takes, he had a lot of them tonight. Check out those articles, guys. You'll be happy you did, and they're filled with little nuggets of information. So that is all we have for you guys over here at Hoopball. Thank you for listening for DFS today. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be looking to crush it and take down some more tournaments.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.